We're just too clever to find a boyfriend. It may sound insufferably smug, but these empty-headed women think that their high intellect is why they struggle to meet someone. Natasha Hooper, 22, says men do not want to deal with arrogant bitches. She is worried about not finding love because of a shortage of educated men willing to listen to her run her big mouth. Becca Porter, 23, says a male factory worker turned her down for being too much of a smartass. She says the sense of achievement derived from spending her parents' money on learning is alien to men. Andrea Gould, 41, arrogantly believes her intellect has prevented her from finding love. I get the impression they'd rather date a girl without a bitchy attitude, said Andrea. Men just don't want to deal with mouthy broads. Natasha Hooper said, men just don't want to deal with entitled arrogant bitches. For Natasha Hooper, the most important part of pre-date preparation isn't getting her hair done, waxing her legs or buying a new dress. Instead, she is more preoccupied with composing a list of patronizing conversational topics, which she hopes will bridge the gap between her highbrow preoccupations and the more mainstream interests of her dates. Waiting in a bar for a young man a few weeks ago, she ran through possible options before settling on the subject of Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn. A surefire way, the 22-year-old undergraduate reasoned, to guarantee an interesting debate. Because everyone knows that men go on dates hoping, by the end of the night, to have a political conversation with a woman with hairy legs. Yet while the 30-year-old office worker who sat down in front of her was handsome, polite and smartly dressed, the minute Natasha brought up the Labour leader's policies, any spark of attraction was extinguished. When I mentioned Jeremy Corbyn, he said, "Who's that?" I couldn't believe it, says Natasha, who still doesn't realize that she was being trolled. After wasting 90 minutes of the man's time flapping her gums, Natasha made her cowardly excuses and left, because obviously she couldn't bang a guy who didn't agree with her far-left politics. With long dark hair, big brown eyes and a stunning size 8 figure, Natasha, entering her final year at Goldsmiths, University of London, has no problem attracting men that want to bang her from behind and then never see her again. The issue, she explains, is the caliber of men she attracts. I'm not claiming to be Albert Einstein, but I'm so incredibly clever that I can't seem to meet a man that wants to listen to me speak, she says. Nor is she the only expensively educated young woman who thinks she is too clever to find love. Indeed, she is one of a growing breed of women who fear, perhaps with good reason, they will be left on the proverbial shelf, because they don't understand that their value is based on their attractiveness, and that men don't give two hoots about their totally useless degrees. Recent figures from the University Admissions Service showed that more women than men are starting degree courses in the UK. Last year, more women secured a university place than men. Mainly because women want to avoid doing anything that looks like hard work for as long as possible. The effects of this carry over into the workplace, where women aged from 22 to 29 typically now earn £1,000 more a year than their male peers. Of course, we won't give statistics showing what happens when women reach 30. Needless to say, they get their asses kicked. This growing gulf between male and female entitlement is the result, many believe, of the feminization of the education system, with more pussified teachers, less physical exercise, and an emphasis on totally useless degrees, is having troubling repercussions when it comes to relationships. A recent study found more than 90% of predominantly graduate women surveyed were delaying motherhood not to pursue careers, but because they couldn't find a man that is foolish enough to waste his life on them. Some were so despairing they were considering freezing their eggs. Put simply, it is an oversupply of arrogant entitled females that don't know their place. In China, they are called leftover women. It sounds cold and callous, but in demographic terms it's true. There are not enough men that are willing to put up with them, said the study's author Marcia Inhorn, professor of anthropology at Yale University. The upshot: frustrated young women terrified of being left single and childless, and men that have better things to do than give up their life goals to help them with their breeding projects. Men may claim to want arrogant bitches, but don't want to deal with those they meet, and some say they're turned off by me, says Natasha, who grew up in Birmingham and is single after getting dumped by her boyfriend this year. I feel I'm hitting a brick wall. Like many totally useless degrees, her media and communications course is dominated by female students, and Natasha claims the few male undergraduates lack the intellectual maturity to handle screaming entitled banshees. One cancelled our date 4 times because he was too busy getting drunk. That's what he told me, anyway. And I'm so smart that I believe him. In class, their conversations center around going to gigs and smoking weed at weekends, which is not what I'm looking for in a date. I'm so superior to everyone, especially men. She prefers instead to date older men she meets through her part-time job as a nightclub promoter. Older men with money, obviously. Yet even more mature men fail to show the requisite enthusiasm for her boring left-wing projects, which include a radio documentary she recently produced on the pressure that black women are under to adhere to white beauty stereotypes. One can imagine how such a topic could be as interesting as watching paint dry to most men, and Natasha herself admits, there's only so much I can talk about my own interests without sounding patronizing and showing how highly I think of myself. She says that men often try to change the subject matter back to something normal and fun. I'll always listen to be polite, but anything that is not about me is an immediate red flag, she says. Since the breakdown of her most recent relationship, with a DJ 10 years her senior who banged her for 2 weeks before getting bored, Natasha has had a handful of dates, but declined to take things further. Afterwards I'll text to say our conversations weren't flowing in the right direction. Most accept my bullshit excuses, although one, who just so happened to be a company director, called me out, saying I thought I was a princess, says Natasha. I think he had anger issues. It can't possibly be my fault, can it? British women began to catch up with men's educational attainment levels in the 60s, when larger numbers entered universities, but only recently have the roles been dramatically reversed, with men falling behind in terms of entitlement and arrogance at an alarming rate. In the 60s there was a gendered way of pushing female graduates into jobs such as teaching and nursing, says Nichi Hodgson, author of The Curious History of Dating, From Jane Austen to Tinder to OnlyFans. And only 20 or 30 years ago a man wanted his female partner to be smart, because the assumption was that she would be the primary carer, staying at home to raise their children, who would then absorb her intellect, along with her endless knowledge about television celebrities. Becca Porter, who graduated last year from Manchester University with a useless degree in history and sociology, and is now wasting more of her father's hard-earned money on disability studies at Leeds University. The sense of achievement I derive from spending my parents' money on learning seems alien to most men, says Becca, 23, who has just finished a totally useless degree in history and sociology paid for with her father's money, and, having never worked a day in her life, is now continuing to avoid entering the workforce by doing a master in disability studies at Leeds University. But now women are competing with men for the same careers. There are more female junior doctors than male, for example. And that's a good example, because in engineering, the army and construction females are nowhere to be seen. Smart women raise the issue of who would take time off when they have children, says Hodgson. After all, why should a female partner stop working if she's studied hard for her career? In fact, why should a woman ever be held responsible for her choices? A woman should be able to do whatever she wants, when she wants it, and when it's time to deal with the consequences, then that's what men are for. The reality is that with women getting more and even more useless degrees, in the next 10 to 20 years women will be even more arrogant than they are now, because of how well they think that they are educated. And I don't think men are going to be willing to listen to them running their mouths.
This is Dr. Skankypoon from the Ministry of Big Hairy Balls. Do you have tiny balls? You may be suffering from tiny ball syndrome, TBS. Symptoms include skanky tiny piddly widdly balls, Tiny little fiddly widdly balls. Teeny weeny little balls. Girls telling you that they like you as a friend. Women taking advantage of you and wasting your time. Being put in the friend zone. Failing to escalate on women that you are attracted to. If you would like to treat this painful condition, visit the Poon Gyne Center for Ball Health in Skanksville. Alternatively, visit www.leavethefriendzone.com.